Excelente. Pues bueno, vamos a comenzar nuestra presentación oficialmente el día de hoy. Gracias a todos, bienvenidos, bienvenidas a este último y tercer día del evento de la Semana de la Ciberseguridad en el marco de justamente los programas de capacitación que ofrece la Alianza Latinoamericana y del Caribe de YMCA, pues a los movimientos de la región principalmente. Excelente, pues bueno, vamos entonces a compartir un poco de lo que va a compartir Mike el día de hoy, la experiencia sucedida, como les mencionaba, en la YMCA de Charlotte en los Estados Unidos. Y pues qué mejor que Mike, que tiene amplia experiencia en la parte de la información, él es vicepresidente en esa área, entonces voy a permitirme leer un poco de su experiencia. La voy a leer en inglés, entonces pues igual si quieren de este momento ir pasando al canal en español para escuchar también pues la experiencia de Mike y a partir de este momento también pues para pasar ya la palabra y comenzar con la presentación del día de hoy. Well, Mike Hodge started his career with the YMCA of Greater Houston in 1996 and is currently serving as its Senior Vice President of Information Technology. Mike has served on committees for YMCA security awareness and is a frequent advisor regarding YMCA technology needs. As the SVP of Information Technology, Mike strives to align the technology needs of the Houston Association with the operational needs of the organization. Mike holds a Master of Science degree in Network Security Technology Project Management from the University of Houston. In addition, Mike is a certified CISSP from ISC2, as well as a PMP from PMI. So Mike, you can share after this information. Well, Mike and his wife, Ellis, have one child, Emily, who is currently attending university. So thank you, Mike, for being here with us today. I will stop my presentation and I will give you the floor to present your deck, your slides, and start with your today's presentation. So thank you, Mike, and the floor is yours.
Thank you for the introduction, Daniel. Appreciate it. I'm going to share out a screen here, and just for a little bit of clarity, this I do work for the Houston, Texas YMCA Association. And the presentation is about what's happened at the Charlotte, North Carolina YMCA. Cesar Silva, who is currently on a plane en route to Brazil, got delayed yesterday evening. I think his flight was delayed 12 hours, and he got stuck here in Houston by chance. It just happened that he was probably 10 minutes away from me, but I was going to co-host this with Cesar, but again, he's stuck in the air on his way to the Brazil right now. And my involvement with this was Cesar and I have worked together for a number of years. So when the incident happened, he contacted me and asked me to lend a hand. So that was my role in the incident. I did not work for the Charlotte Y at the time. I was just a trusted colleague of Cesar's, so I'm aware of the situation, the incident, and I'm going to be flying solo here to do this presentation. So I hope I do him justice. So there was a cyber incident that happened in Charlotte, North Carolina, about 6 months ago, September 10th, 2021. The Charlotte Y became aware that they were the victim of a ransomware attack. I think it was about 5 in the morning, 5 a.m. local time, Charlotte, when they became aware that they had been attacked. They're pretty much their entire server stack had been ransomwared. Everything was ransomware, crypto locked from the top of the stack down as far as the servers went. It was isolated to the servers, which is bad enough. It didn't make it beyond the server room out into the branches, but it was their primary CRM was ransomware. The phone system, the file shares, everything. It rendered them pretty. It made their technology useless at the time. So it was a pretty heavy attack. Upon discovering that they had been ransomware attacked, they immediately went into their incident response protocol. And so what that consisted of was notifying the relevant insurance company. And I can't stress enough, I'll probably come back to this topic a lot, that cyber insurance is a very important tool these days. It's almost a must to have. But they notified the cyber insurance company. And from that, the cyber insurance company launched a privileged and confidential investigation. The cyber insurance company really took the reins at that point. They engaged the attorneys, they engaged a PR firm, and they engaged third-party forensics tools or people and tools to start figuring out exactly what had happened. So, and again, that's something we'll circle back to and talk about here in a moment. And then immediately began contemplating the internal and external communication plan. I would like to add a little commentary there. One thing that if you ever, and I hope it never happens, if you ever do experience a ransomware attack of any time, of any type, the best thing you can do to start with is not knee-jerk and start over communicating immediately. Get the professionals involved and let them help you with a incident response tool, a plan, and the verbiage that should go out and when it should go out. So that's a personal recommendation from me. And along with that, and with that happening, in operations management, the Charlotte Y has a business continuity plan. So having that continuity plan in place allowed them to minimize the disruptions to the frontline staff, and the incident response plan helped them address these issues that came up in a streamlined fashion. Having that incident response plan was essential. Being able to have a plan in place for, if this happens, let's start enacting these skill sets and these communication plans. So they had that, and what that looked like, a lot of it looked like pen and paper. The plan was in place, but it's pen and paper. When the electronics go away, you have to resort to something, and paper and pen is sometimes the plan. And that was the plan for a couple of days. And for the phone system and the website, being able to throw up a quick page on the website, we're experiencing technical difficulties, et cetera, et cetera. So, and message management, that was the next thing engaged. So again, the cyber policy engaged a PR firm, and through the Data Privacy Council, they developed a communications playbook. Very, very thorough, it encompassed everything. The playbook had internal communications, external communications for members, for employees, volunteers, the board of directors, trustees, donors, and the press. It wasn't a one-size-fits-all communication that went out. It was a different set of verbiage that went out for different groups. So as the incident unfolded and they became more aware of what happened, they crafted the plan and they crafted the messaging, and that messaging evolved over time. Because once they realized they were ransomware attacked, it did take a little bit of time to figure out what was the root, what happened, what happened, and what do we communicate out. So we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. And again, through the third-party forensics firm, the third-party forensics firm engaged the bad actors, started talking with the people that did the ransomware. There was a point of contact on that side, and to understand the demands. What did they really want? And the really important bullet point here is that they obtained more information. They were working to obtain more information on what the bad actors claimed to have harvested, what the data was. I just add a little commentary here to, again, let the experts do the talking. I really, that was something that was made very apparent. So once the cyber policy was engaged, the PR firm, the law firm, the forensics team, they became the leads on all those points, and was really good. And they did the talking with the bad actors, and they do it every day. Unfortunately, that's what their job is. And unfortunately, it happens a lot, but they are professionals. They know what they're doing. To understand their demands, to put it in a little bit of frame of reference, the initial demand for them to provide the key to unlock everything was $1.8 million US. So 1.8 million US was the initial demand. And at that moment, of course, the thought is, well, the cyber policy is going to pay that immediately. Well, they didn't, and rightfully so. We'll talk about why that was here in a bit. But well, the third-party forensics firm, at the direction of the council, worked with the YMCA's IT team and took immediate measures to deploy an EDR, an endpoint detection and response tool. Put that throughout the YMCA's network to see exactly what traffic was going on, if the ransomware had gone any deeper than they were aware of, and it really was a big part of the forensics toolkit. Something I'd like to add with that is an EDR. If you do not have an EDR in place yet, it's becoming a requirement for a cyber insurance company to write a policy these days. They're requiring an EDR to be in place. And so I can give you a couple of recommendations on vendors if you'd like that later, but an EDR response tool, Charlotte put one in after the fact, but right now it's becoming a proactive measure, something to have in place. So third-party forensics firm was able to share its findings on September 27th, which was, I'm trying to do my math here, which was about 17 days after the incident had happened. Just give you a little bit of an idea of how thorough how deep they had to go and how much time it took. So legally, in the US, the legal obligations actually float from state to state. They're not identical from Texas to California to North Carolina, et cetera. But from the findings from the forensics firm, Data Privacy Council and the YMCA of Greater Charlotte worked collaboratively to determine what legal obligations, if any, the Y had as a result of the data privacy event. So the legal part of it is a very, very important of what you have to disclose and when you have to disclose. There's different time frames for different items, and we have PIIs. If it's personal identifiable information, there's a set of rules. If it was banking information, there's a different set of rules. And again, it can vary from state to state in the US. The process involved a review of the data in question, as known as data mining. Based on the results and the Privacy Council's legal advice, on January 19th of 2022, the Y provided notifications and offered credit and monitoring to the individuals who may have been potentially impacted by the data privacy event. So I'll give you a little more history on that as well. So the morning the incident was discovered and everything was ransomware, the immediate thought, the knee-jerk reaction could be, well, all of our data has been compromised. Everything that if they were able to get into a server and crypto lock it, they claimed to have access to a lot of it, all of that information. They claimed to have access to quite a bit of information that after the the forensics firm went through the process, they found out that they did not have banking information, credit card information, nor did they have access to their CRM data in general. So that turned out to be quite a blessing. And that goes back to the original request of the bad actors of 1.8 million. If you think all of your data has been compromised, 1.8 million might feel a little more digestible, even though it's not. In the end, it was determined that approximately out of their entire user base, only 800 people were affected. So there was a lot of data on their network that was ransomware, but that data was already previously encrypted by Charlotte. So point out that in the end, only 800 people were affected and had to be notified, which was a very good thing. So that $1.8 million quickly dropped down once the forensics team figured out what access the bad actors had. And jumping ahead a little bit, the Charlotte Y ended up paying $60,000 US just to protect the people that may have been affected. So one of the agreements with the bad actor was that they would not publish the information that they had received. So out of the 800 people who were compromised, kind of as a hedge against that data being published, $60,000 was paid to the bad actors. Not 1.8 million, but $60,000 by the cybersecurity policy. And again, the 800 people that were affected were provided credit monitoring services to help ease that issue. This is my page. This is where I live. This is the area where this is where I live day to day. I'd like to lead with the less data you have available that bad actors could access, the less exposure you have. I know that seems obvious. It should seem obvious, but we all tend to be, the lack of a better term, data hoarders. We have data, we keep data, we tend to not want to delete anything, but the less data you have that has the potential of being exposed, the better. Doing an inventory of what you have on your systems and really making sure that it is something that is relevant, that you still need and is not old data is a very important thing to do. That's, again, the less you have available, the less exposure you have. We'll lead with that. So the Forensics Firm and Data Privacy Council provided some guidelines and recommendations on how to better protect the YMCA's network and maintain good cyber hygiene to prevent a future data event and to further mitigate any damages. So the guidelines that came from the forensics firm were, first and foremost, implement an EDR, an endpoint detection and response tool. An EDR is like an antivirus, a really souped up antivirus. It monitors traffic on your network. It looks for things that it has intelligent threat monitoring. If something starts crawling your network and doesn't look quite right, an EDR is the type of tool that learns all the time, and it will give you alerts that something looks suspicious on your network. It's a more intelligent antivirus, if you will, but it crawls throughout the network. So an EDR, I can't stress that enough. With a 24/7 monitoring as well. We use a company. There's a couple of them, Sophos, CrowdStrike, but they do 24/7 monitoring. If they see something, they actually have the ability to shut down a network port on machines on the network. So we give them that ability to do that. So an EDR is a very important tool to have in the arsenal. Multi-factor authentication for VPNs and email environments. I receive probably 2 emails personally per week from people in the nonprofit space who are using Office 365, which is fantastic. I'm a big fan of Microsoft's Office 365 environment, but they have not enabled multi-factor authentication. You know, multi-factor being something like a password, and something you have, like potentially a phone where a text message can be sent to verify. You can put in an extra code, or an authentication tool, but it's 2-factor authentication instead of just a password. But again, I've received multiple emails a week from nonprofits that, with all good intent, somebody clicked a message, put a bad message, a phishing email, put their password in, and it is blasting throughout, blasting all over the place, getting email blasts. So multi-factor authentication, it should be something that everybody does by default. It shouldn't be an option in my opinion. So implementing multi-factor authentication in VPNs and email environments, disabling legacy protocols in Office 365. So there's some best practices documents out there for Office 365. If you have a hybrid, and some people are still running some hybrid environments where it's Office 365 talks to an on-premise solution, maybe POP is enabled for email still, and you don't need that. Disable all those old unneeded protocols, because it turns into a backdoor way for bad actors to get in. And again, every one of these is important. It's hard to list one above the other, but patching and installing hardware and software updates, patches, Microsoft's weekly patches. If you're a Microsoft shop, get the weekly patches on. If you get notices that there's an emergency hotfix out, get those pushed out. That's the easiest thing you can do and the quickest thing you can do to help protect your environment. So patching and installing software and hardware updates, that, I guess if I had to rate them all, that would be number 1, because that is the out of the box, you should be doing that. It's free. And if a patch is out there, you should be putting it on. Next recommendation is to maintain a reliable backup, both on-site and off-site, that is completely separate from the network systems. I've dealt with customers that they do on-site backups, and their backups are to disk these days instead of tape. And you come in to find out that they had been ransomware attacked, and the ransomware, they were crypto locked on their servers, but their backup servers were crypto locked as well. So if you're not keeping something off-site, keeping current backups off-site, you could run the risk of not only having your information crypto locked on-site, but your backups as well. So it's something to take into consideration, off-site backups, and test those backups regularly. Having a plan in place to make sure that your backups are viable. Understanding and managing the data present within the network. That goes back to a term I use is data hoarding. We keep just lots of data, and a lot of it we might not need anymore. Practicing good hygiene of purging data that you no longer need is very effective. So again, the less you have available, the less is potentially available for a bad actor to get a hold of. So just understand what's on your network, what you're keeping. Do you really need it? And do you need those well, in the US, we need those social security numbers. Do we need certain identifiers? We do those audits to make sure that we're not keeping those. Deletion and archiving of old emails. I'm as guilty as anyone about that, about keeping emails. I have email history for decades, it seems, but deletion of emails because they can have bad information in it, archiving them and using encryption for email with sensitive information. I keep going back to Office 365 because it seems that it's predominant with the people I work with. Office 365 has some built-in encryption tools for email. So any data that you're sending, any data that you send via email, just consider that it's available to the world, that anybody can read it. Anybody can get it. They can put network sniffing tools and read anything that's put on the network, unless you encrypt it. So if you're putting anything, any sensitive information in an email, you should use encryption and practice those policies. Just make sure that's part of the policy. And if you're an Office 365 user, it is built in. The encryption features are built in, and you just need to enable them. And deletion of unnecessary documents from the network that may contain information. We keep, that one keeps coming up. It's to know what's on your network and make sure you don't have any unnecessary information on the network that help protect yourself. Encryption or password protection for documents that may contain sensitive information. Pretty straightforward. If you have something on the network, it's got to be there and it has sensitive information, encrypt it. Make sure those files are encrypted. And that helped Charlotte a lot with when they were ransomware, banking information, a lot of personal identifiable information. Those things were encrypted to start with. So when the bad actors made it into the network and harvested some data out, well, they were harvesting encrypted data out before they ransomwared it. They couldn't unencrypt the data, as Charlotte was unable to unencrypt what they had done to their network. So the data they had harvested, for the most part, was pretty much useless to them, which worked out to be very beneficial for the Charlotte Y. And lastly, to have a incident response plan or protocol that is readily accessible and not on the network environment. If you have an incident response plan and it's in electronic format and it's on your network and your network is ransomware, then you have no access to that incident response plan if it gets encrypted. So make sure you keep a hard copy of that incident response plan somewhere. And what's not on here, not only that, but conduct tabletop exercises. Go through a mock incident. As stated earlier, make sure your backups are valid. Practice a restore of your backups on a regular basis. Even if it's just a couple files, make sure your backups are viable. To have a tabletop exercise, what would we do if we were ransomware? If our network became unavailable, what would we do for payroll? What would we do for members to be able to conduct transactions? Conduct those exercises, have a plan, document it, have a hard copy of it available, and go through it. Just to have a practice runs of what you would do and you'd be surprised of what it does uncover in it, and it will lead you to better solutions in the future. And with that really is the bulk of the presentation right there. We're at the questions part at that point.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for the recommendation, for the presentation of the experience and what happened in Charlotte and your support from YMCA Houston. We have we have a question in the chat. Bueno, también invitamos a la gente a colocar sus comentarios, sus dudas a través del chat, o igual si quieren hacer uso de la palabra pueden activar su micrófono para compartir con Mike alguna duda que tuvieran sobre esta situación. I will read the first one from Nelson. That is, how convenient is to use the option of to keep the password for access to access the sites using the drive, for example, for having the files in the drive folder. So what convenient is that? Do you recommend it?
Keeping a file with passwords. I don't, honestly. I don't. Every time I see that, I cringe a little bit when I see people saving passwords on in a file on the network. If you're going to do it, make sure it's encrypted. That would be baseline number one, would be to make sure it is an encrypted file. I can't stress that enough. Encrypt, especially because if somebody did receive that or was able to obtain that file, that's the keys to the kingdom right there. They've got a lot of stuff. I see users every day that have personal files that my bank account, username, password, my savings account, username, password, just so they'll remember it. And it's just, it's not good practice. There are some sites, some single sign-on sites. I think one of the most popular one is called Okta, OKTA, and they just had a breach this week or last week, and so we've never been an Okta client, thankfully. But so Okta is kind of an electronic way of what we just suggested. They give you a single sign-on way to get into multiple applications that are not integrated as single sign-on, but it stores your password. And all you have to remember is your Okta password, and then you can get into your other apps. Well, Okta was compromised. So that was very recent. I haven't read any follow-ups on that, on what the remediation strategy is for that. But that doesn't seem like it's a good thing at all. But saving passwords on the network, I recommend against it. But if you do it, I do recommend that you encrypt the file with a strong password. Mm-hmm. And if I may, with the recommendation, there's something on with emails as well. Some of emails with sensitive information, make sure that you encrypt them. If you're using an Office 365 solution, their encryption is, you are able to enable encryption and send encrypted emails by default. However, there's also some other tools within Office 365 that are DLP, and it's just data loss prevention. So we have some rules in place that just, if somebody types a credit card number in an email and sends it, and with good intentions, we just, I want to send, here's my credit card information. Could you please charge me for XYZ? Well, with the DLP enabled within Office 365, it's intelligent enough that it sees that a credit card number, or in the States, a social security number, some type of sensitive number string is in the file, and it will actually deny that email from being sent. The user will receive a message back saying you should not send this unencrypted. So just a little tip that if you're using Office 365, take a look at the DLP protocols.
Great. Thank you, Mike. We have other two questions here. One from Rocio from Peru. It is a recent event. However, have you been able to learn how the WISE professional team in Charlotte have felt about the response measures provided?
Yes. Yes. Have a very good working relationship with Cesar, and then the core team around him at the time. I think everybody would state that having the cyber policy and having the people that were involved, that did the heavy lifting, that did the forensics, that did the PR, did the public relations, the legal thing, that they did a really good job. They were very happy with that, and it's a direct reflection on what I think is the need for cyber insurance. We might not know who all to contact, but they did. It was, one basic call to the cyber policy to enact an incident, and they took the ball and ran with it. So, and that, yes, they were very happy with the response.
Thank you, Mike. Another question from Sarah Liz. Did you decide to file a criminal complaint before the courts of law afterwards, and why?
I will have to get back to you on that because I don't know the answer if they did or not. And I'm not. That's not a dodge question. I don't know if a complaint was a criminal complaint was filed. If so, that typically happens via the cyber insurance policy because they're looking to get a return on what they had to pay out, and that would be typical, but it would not be out of character for the entity themselves, being Charlotte, to file charges. I think I'm safe in telling you that it was not a local entity that did it. It was somebody. It was a group overseas that did it. So the chances of actually being able to get a hold of the people and prosecute them would be very low.
Excellent. Thank you, Mike. Igual invitamos a la gente, pues igual si tienen algún otro comentario, duda sobre lo que nos está compartiendo ahora Mike, es el momento para compartir ya sea por el chat o también si gustan hacer alguna intervención a través del micrófono, totalmente bienvenidos sus comentarios, sus dudas en este tiempo de sesión de preguntas y respuestas. Yeah, we have another question. Thank you, Rocio, from Peru. Has this event changed policies at the YMCA of the USA level?
Interesting question. At the did it change policies at the YMCA of the USA level? I would think not. I think I'm pretty confident in saying it not. YMCA of the USA had most, if not all, of these measures in place already for the national office. So didn't really change anything for the YMCA of the USA national office. This presentation is starting to be shared with other associations and in the US. So it could in the future change policies, but right now I wouldn't say that it has directly impacted or changed any policies directly.
Right. Thank you, Mike. Another question from Rodrigo. Thank you, Rodrigo. Rodrigo asked did the security experts recommend to pay for the ransomware attack or it was a YMCA decision?
I believe in the end, it was the YMCA's decision. And again, it was a low number considering a 1.8 or 1.2 million US down to 60,000 US. And again, the reason that 60,000 was paid was really just to keep it from keep the bad actors from going public. They're just kind of keep it a little more private, and no reason. The people that were affected were alerted, so no reason to make a big deal out of something that did not affect their entire membership base, but a small subset. So I believe it was a local decision.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Good to know. Another question from Sarah Liz. It's about after the ransomware attack, were you able to access the information in your cell phones, or it was a general attack in computers?
Very good question. No, the ransomware was isolated to just the servers. Mm-hmm. So it was isolated to the server room, which housed email and the CRM tool, the membership tools, phone system, things like that. Cell phones they did work. They did not work with the email system, because the email system at the time was locked, was compromised. But cell phones continued to work. Text messaging continued to work. Email was not offline very long, and nor were many things offline that long. I'm trying to recall what day of the week it was. I think it was a Thursday, if memory serves, when it happened. And since the YMCA of Charlotte had a good backup plan in place, a good incident response plan, they were able to restore from backup. That's why the ransomware was really, they didn't need the key to get things back online. They just immediately started restoring from backup. And just within a couple of days, every system was back online. So can't stress enough about those backups and keeping some off-site, not on the network.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. A question from me. Do you have any recommendation for YMCAs in Latin America and Caribbean that some of them don't have any plan to prevent imminent attacks of ransomware attacks? For example, you talk about data loss prevention. Do you have any recommendation of the tools they can access to, or something that they help to prevent?
Yeah, so I mean, starting with the basic up is patching. I really can't stress enough. Staying up to date. Microsoft has Patch Wednesdays. They release their patches. And Daniel, is it safe to assume that YMCAs on this call are primarily Microsoft shops?
Mm-hmm.
Primarily?
Yeah,
okay.
I think so.
So Patch Wednesdays are a big deal. Getting those patches pushed out and installed, that is a really big deal. That is the number one thing you can do to help yourself from being exposed, because it's just whenever an exploit is found, Microsoft and other vendors are quick to put a patch out. And where we find that a lot of people are negligent, that's a strong term, is in applying patches. It's such a simple thing, and it really makes a big difference. Second, antivirus. Microsoft Defender is included with Windows 10 now. It's been included for a while, and it has become a decent antivirus. If you don't have a third party, make sure you have Defender enabled, and make sure that you're getting the updates for it, because updates for Microsoft Defender are released regularly as well. And it's turned out to be a good tool. Thinking out loud here, again, going through Office, and Daniel, is it safe to assume Office 365 is prevalent for, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so Office 365, just some knowledge-based articles, follow the best practice. DLP, it's a setting in the console called DLP, and it walks you through it. Enable DLP, and it'll have just some preset rules. Don't allow, again, for US, I keep saying social security numbers, because it's a government ID that we have. Everybody has a unique social security number, and it is something that bad actors really want to get a hold of. Because it's a number we have for our entire life. So it's a very personal number. But in credit card numbers, DLP, you don't have, it's point and click. Don't allow credit cards. Don't allow social. Don't allow federal ID numbers, and it really is intelligent enough to block most of them. And in fact, it's so sensitive. We get emails every now and then that I tried to send a phone number and it's telling me I can't send that. And, well, it looked like a credit card number. So, but that's something you can do. Keep your antivirus and back if you're using something other than Microsoft Defender, if you're using a third party. Make sure your signature files are up to date. That's just good best practices. That's daily I'll check for signature files. It's because something could come out the night before and get that signature file updated, and you're in a much better spot. Another recommendation, which might sound trivial, but default usernames and passwords. I can walk up to a lot of multi-function device scanner copiers in my neighborhood or at a local business, and I can walk up and type admin 11111, and it's changed the default usernames and passwords on your equipment. So it seems trivial, but it is something that gets overlooked quite often. Does that help? Is that a good?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Thank you, Mike. Yeah, I agree with Rocío. Thank you very much for your advice. No sé si alguien más tenga algún otro comentario, alguna pregunta para Mike en este momento. Gracias, Toño. I mean, thank you for your representation, Mike. Well, I think we have no more comments or questions right now. Mike, to start closing our today's presentation, is it possible for you to share a final comment of recommendation from YMCA's of this side of the continent for this kind of events, or something in general you can share with us?
Sure. I don't know if it's advice as much as it is a statement. Okay. That I get quite asked often is, how do we make sure that we never have a cyber incident? And my response is that it's not if you're going to have it's not what you can do. It's not if you're going to have a cyber incident. It's when you're going to have a cyber incident. So plan, patch, and back up, and have an incident response plan in place, and have something, and test it again. Test your backups, test your incident response plan, have that hard copy. But truly, it just does seem to matter. You can do everything you can in your power to protect your data, and you should. But it almost seems these days it's just a matter of when you see the big players, the professionals getting attacked. If I could leave you with that thought, it's not if, it's when, but do everything in your power to make sure that it's a long time from now that it happens.
Thank you very much, Mike, for your final comment. We have a final question from Sarah Liz. Yeah, we have time for that, if you don't mind. The final question is, for cell phone protection, what do you recommend?
Updates. I run an Apple device, and I make sure that if there's an update that's been put out, it's on there. I have it the next day. So it's, again, Apple, much like Microsoft, once they discover an exploit, they're quick to put a patch out. So take the time, update your cell phones. There are some BYOD, bring your own device policies and things you can implement within Office 365. You might want to take a look at that. But again, for cell phones, whether it's an Android or an iOS device, keep your updates up to date.
Excellent. Thank you for your recommendation and your final remarks, Mike. So, gracias a todos y cada uno de ustedes por este tiempo, por acompañarnos, especially Mike. Thank you for your time sharing this experience, and we hope that it will be significant and for all the YMCAs here in the region that as you said, to understand is not what or if not when will happen this kind of attack, so we will have to be prepared. Y bueno, pues gracias a todos, también a cada uno de ustedes, por acompañarnos durante estos 3 días de evento, de trabajo. Creo que ha sido una experiencia significativa. Y bueno, pues invitarlos a continuar pendientes de las redes sociales del ACA YMCA para que continúen conociendo de futuros eventos que puedan ser de interés para ustedes. Finalmente, pedirles dos cosas. Igualmente que puedan continuar entrando a la página web del evento porque vamos a colocar las grabaciones. Voy a dejar, de hecho, de grabar en este momento.